He is recognized as one of the foremost experts for fire operations and incident command, having served as an incident commander at 9/11. I personally have attended Chief Salka's training and will always remember his number one message. Training is not the most important thing. It is the only thing. Later, as I moved into chief officer positions, I also tried to emulate the chief's additional message. Chief Salka was known to say, it's about them. The citizens come first. I don't know why you would want to be a firefighter if you don't want to take care of everyone ahead of yourself. So I'm pleased to introduce Chief Salka, who takes time away from serving in his most important role at the highest rank he's ever achieved to be here tonight. That rank is Grandpa. Today, if you engage Chief Salka in a conversation, that conversation will probably include a story about his kids. So Chief Salka, we are truly honored for you to be here tonight, and we all very much look forward to hearing from you. Chief John Salka.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. Everybody's modest. Nobody likes to hear somebody blowing a horn. And I guess most of it was true. I've forgotten about most of that stuff. I have to I remember it when somebody introduces me now and then. But let's skip to the end. Grandpa is my favorite. And I'm certainly no expert at home, that's for sure. I think that's probably pretty universal for everybody here. It's also an honor to be here with this great organization, and the work that you do is historic and well-deserved, and I'm glad to be a small part of that. I don't have any notes. I rarely have notes. Me and my buddy, Rick Lasky, he's a retired chief from Texas. We met at FDIC doing some hands-on training, and we've been working together for decades now. We talk about it all the time. Most of the time, I don't have notes. Even when I do a PowerPoint program, I rarely look at the screen. If anything, it's just a prompt to remind me of the story that I'm going to tell. Or sometimes, if I can't remember it, which is happening, raise your hand if you're over 65. Raise your hand if you're over 65. Okay. There's a couple of guys down there scratching their heads. They're not sure if they're 65 or not. My memory is going sometimes, and sometimes he's got to prod me into telling a story. So tonight's presentation, I'll call it, is really about the work that all of us do. It's one of my, I hate to say it's my favorite story because it's about September 11th. And frankly, sometimes I'm tired of hearing about it. Sometimes I feel a little intruded upon sometimes around 9/11, but I knew a lot of the guys that died that day. I was there that day, and on that story goes. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about Jay Jonas. Raise your hand if you know who Jay Jonas is. Raise your hand. Nobody? Jay Jonas is the captain. I see one hand. Jay Jonas, I see two. Jay Jonas is a good friend of mine. And he was the captain on 9/11, the captain of Ladder Company 6 in Chinatown. And they responded to the World Trade Center. I think they might have gone on a second alarm, but it doesn't matter. And Jay Jonas and his boys, Jay Jonas and his men, the 6 people from Ladder 6 were in the North Tower climbing, going up. Before he went up, he talked to a couple of guys. Jerry Nevins was one of them. Jerry Nevins was a firefighter from Rescue 1 who was lost that day. And Jerry and Jay were friends. Jay had been at Jerry's wedding. Just coincidentally, there they were in the lobby together. Jerry Nevins was from Rescue 1 in Midtown Manhattan. Jay Jonas was from 6 Truck in downtown Manhattan. And they just ended up next to each other and talking while the chiefs there were trying to figure out what to do. And Jerry said to Jay, gee, we'll be lucky if we get out of here alive today. Now, all of us can appreciate that because we know 343 men died that day, along with thousands of civilians. And we know how tragic that day ended up. But thinking that or predicting that or fearing that before it actually happened, before the end actually happened, the event was well underway, was pretty observant. But a lot of those men were thinking that day. So Jay Jonas goes up with his men, 6 truck, up the stairway in the North Tower to do what they could do. There weren't very many specific instructions that day. Most of the time it was, Jay, take your guys up there, see what you can do, see what you can get done. They knew they had thousands of civilians up there, many of them trapped, a lot of them injured. Most of the people above where the planes struck died. And most of the people below where the plane struck survived. But many of them did die from burns and from other injuries. And that's what the firemen were faced with. Not too many firemen got above where the planes hit. My friend Oriole Palmer got there. Oriole died that day, but he got there and announced on the radio that he was on the 78th floor. He had numerous 1045s. And, for the truck that was behind him and the engine, we need a hose line up here and et cetera, et cetera. And the building collapsed about a minute later. But most of our operations were below the areas where the planes hit. So Jay Jonas and his men were well up into the building. And as you can imagine, if you saw any pictures or remember any videos, the stairways were fairly narrow. For the size of the building, the amount of people that were required to evacuate, the stairways were pretty narrow. Like one line going down and one line going up. Civilians were going down and firefighters were going up. And occasionally they'd meet somebody or they'd meet a company that had a civilian that needed some assistance and they would help. And they were continuing to go up to try and make sure that there weren't people stranded, left, injured, farther up in the building. Well, eventually Jay Jonas noticed, Jay's a brilliant guy. Eventually he noticed that the stairways were quieting down. There weren't very many civilians left. And most of the firefighters were engaged in doing something, but weren't traveling either up or down. And he turned to his guys and said, gee, we haven't seen a civilian in, 10 minutes or 10 floors. And he decided to start moving back down the building, see if there was any stragglers going down. When the South Tower collapsed, which was the adjacent building, it made a gigantic rumble. It shook the North Tower. It couldn't be missed. They weren't sure what it was. Jay later tells me he thought it was maybe a piece of the building that they were in. Maybe there was a collapse in the involved area above them. So he said, let's go. Let's get out of here. So his guys his men, his firefighters, started to drop all their stuff. They started to take their SCBAs off. They started to leave their ropes and their tools, and they started to leave everything. He said, what are you doing? They said, we don't need this stuff to get out of here. It's weight. It's going to slow us down. He said, pick up everything. We're leaving nothing here. You never know what could happen. So they picked up all their stuff. I'm sure they were not real thrilled about that. And down they went. And they started their exit. When they got to I think it was the 12th floor. And I don't mean the details don't matter, but they don't. The stuff that really matters, I'll get to. They got to the 12th floor. They met Geraldine. And she was a 60-something-year-old civilian worker from the World Trade Center that was trying to make her way down. And she was not healthy. Her legs were bothering her, and I don't know what her ailment was, but she was moving very slowly. Now, obviously, you can't rush past her and say, hurry up, lady, and follow us, right? They had to stop and assist her and stay with her and coax her down. And she told them, go, boys, I'll make it out. They said, nope, we're here to help you. So they stayed with her. After about 2 or 3 floors, it was obvious that she was not going to be moving too quickly. And I don't know what it was. I've had a lot of conversations with Jay. Just spoke to him yesterday. I don't know what it was, but Jay had an inkling. Jay had a feeling that things were not going well and that they needed to move more quickly. And he was trying to tell them that. Come on, guys, let's go. Help her. And At that point, two of the senior guys said, "Hey, Cap, listen, we'll stay with Josephine. You take the other two guys. You guys head out. Get out of here. And we'll take." He said he wouldn't have it. He said, "Absolutely not. We're a company. We came in together. We work together. We leave together. Don't even bring it up again. There's no discussion. The discussion's over." And it was. And he was a well-respected guy. So they continued on their way. At one point, he thought, you know what? Let me run into one of the floors, whatever floor we're on now, the 9th floor, the 8th floor. Let me run into one of the floors here, see if I can grab a chair. For those of you that are firefighters, you know, lot quicker way to get somebody out of a building, right? Pick them up, dump them in a chair. Two guys pick up the chair, and down we go down the stairs. Great idea, Jay. So Jay heads into the floor to look around, and it turns out it was a machinery room or something. I can't remember what exactly he said, but there were no chairs. There were no chairs. It wasn't an office floor like a lot of the other ones were. While he was in there, he tried to look out the window. He couldn't look out the window. The windows were just pasted gray. And that was all the debris and the dust from the South Tower that had collapsed maybe 10 minutes earlier. And it was just against the windows. He couldn't look out at all. And also while he was in there, he felt the building start to rumble. Visibly, audibly, he felt the building start to rumble. And he knew what it was. And he knew what it was. He said, "I knew what it was." He said, and he was emotional when he told me this. And for those of you that are officers of any rank, responsible for the lives of other people with you, right? Never mind the civilians, and I don't mean never mind them, disregard them, but you're responsible for the people that you work with. It's a tremendous responsibility. He said when he felt the building start to rumble, he knew the building was collapsing, and he knew they were going to die. He said, "I knew I had failed." He said it was an overwhelming feeling. He said, but I had no time to think about it. He said, I started rushing back towards the stairway. He said, I had to get to the stairway. I wanted us to all be found together. So he ran back to the stairway. And he said it got louder and louder and louder and more violent, the shaking. And when he burst through the door into the stairway is when the collapse reached the floor that they were on, which was the 4th or the 5th floor. And the building collapsed. And everybody in this room, man, woman, child, I don't care how young you are, you probably can see that. You probably can see one of those videos now of those buildings falling. They just pancaked right down and the outer walls just peeled off. And Jay Jonas and his 5 men were in that building when it collapsed, along with several others. 11 people survived that collapse. When it was over, they were stuck in this destroyed concrete stairway. It really wasn't a stairway anymore. It was sort of like a collapse zone. The dust was so heavy, he said, they couldn't hardly breathe. They had to scoop the dust out of their mouths so they could breathe. It was very difficult. Luckily, they were working that day with a good captain who said, bring your SCBA with you. And most of them were able to get their SCBAs back on and breathe under those heavy conditions. A little bit of smoke and a lot of dust. Some of their tools were disheveled and lost and dropped and caught under pieces of concrete. They got separated a little bit. 2 of them were on the floor below, and 3 of them were up with him. And, of course, Josephine was there as well. She was still alive. She was along for the ride. Pretty good story she could tell as well. So they were there for a while. Another little side story, Mike Wacola. Mike was a firefighter in 45 truck when I was in Rescue 3 with Jay. We were both in Rescue 3 together as firefighters. Mike Wacola was a firefighter in 45 truck in the same building. Mike Wacola was now a lieutenant in 5 truck at the World Trade Center. He was in the same building that Jay was in when it collapsed, and he was given a mayday. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Nobody answered it, probably because he was encased in the collapse. But Jay heard it, and Jay answered him. He said, Mike, is that you? Because they knew each other. He said, yeah, Jay. He said, I'm trapped. There's been a collapse. I'm trapped. He said, I'm hurt bad. And he said, I need help. Can you help me? Jay said, I can't. He said, I'm in the same collapse you're in. I'm down on the 4th floor. Where are you? He said, I'm on the 12th floor. So at least Mike was on the 12th floar when it happened. I'm sure that's not where he was anymore. Number one, there wasn't a 12th floor. He was in a debris pile somewhere. He said, I'm hurt bad. And Mike Wacola died that day. Google that. Google Mike Wacola and read the story. It was Mike Wacola's last day on the job. It was his last day on the job. And his chauffeur, a senior firefighter who's alive today, tells the story of him coming down to the kitchen and talking about things and talking about his kids. And he brought in 24 single dollars. And every hour that went by, he'd go down to the kitchen, put a dollar bill on the table for the next hour. And he never got to use all his dollars. And this happened at 8 something in the morning. He would have got off duty at 9, Mike Wacola. So Jay couldn't help Mike. And luckily they still had all their equipment because they were now able to, since they took their tools with them and they had their masks, they were able to breathe. They were able to try and force some doors that they had either access or partial access to. They were able to move some of the blocks of concrete that used to be steps. They shared some air with Josephine. And there they were. And they were there for hours. Eventually they were rescued by 43 truck, of all places, a truck from up in Harlem that came down, God knows, on the 5th alarm or the borough call or something way later in the operation. They were rescued. But to a great degree, as a result of Jonas being a great officer and saying, no, we're not going to run down without our gear on. We're not going to run down without our tools because it'll be easier and faster. He was a pretty disciplined guy. He was known for that his whole career. And the rest of his career went on. It wasn't his last day on the job. Jay got promoted to battalion chief a couple of weeks later and went on to be a deputy chief. He was my boss the last night that I worked on a job. He just retired recently with 42 years on a job. Great, great guy. So it's over. They all get rescued, including Josephine, this 60-something-year-old woman who's got some story to tell. And life goes on. That sounds ridiculous. Been 24 years since 9/11, and a lot of things have happened. Whole world has changed. The whole damn world has changed. 10 years later, Jay Jonas, Chief Jay Jonas, battalion chief, gets a call from the boys at 6 Truck. Hey, Chief, how you doing? Pretty good, Tommy. What's up? Hey, Josephine died. What? Yeah, we just got a call from her sister. Apparently she has a sister that lives in Brooklyn, and her sister called to ask to talk to you. We told her you weren't here, but to ask for help. Her sister really doesn't have any money either. She died sort of in poverty. She was looking for maybe a little bit of help to bury Josephine. Jay said, really? Do you have her number? And he said, yeah. So Jay was off and running. Off and running. What did he do? Well, he started to make some phone calls. And actually, one of them was to, he and Josephine had both, about a year earlier, been on a TV show. And it was about Josephine, obviously. That's why she was on the show with him. And he called the show to see if the host of the show could help them out. And he never got an answer there. So he moved on. Anyway, he started making some calls to some different organizations and different foundations and things of that nature. And word started to spread that Josephine had passed and that there was a need for donations and things of that nature. Jay made a couple of phone calls himself, but most of the things that happened were people reaching out to him. He got a call from a small church in downtown Manhattan, small Catholic church. And the pastor of the church said, we would be honored and happy to have her funeral here. She's a Catholic. We looked it up, and we'd be happy to have her funeral here in our church. Wonderful. You need more than a funeral when you die, right? And the next phone call Jay got was from a funeral parlor director in downtown Manhattan who called him up and said, hello, Chief Jonas. This is, Bill Brown. I don't remember his name. Doesn't matter. He said, I own a funeral parlor on, Spring Street. And he said, I've always respected and loved firefighters. He said, we had the building that my apartment was in and my funeral parlor 20 years ago collapsed, partial collapse. And I stood outside that building all night watching the firemen digging out my wife and child. He said, I'll never forget it. And I've never forgotten it. And for that reason, I will donate a wake. I will donate a casket. I will donate a cemetery plot for Josephine. Jay said, wonderful. The next phone call Jay got was from the cardinal, who's Catholic. Catholic, raise your hand. Catholic. You know what a cardinal is? That's not a parish priest. That's That's a big boy. That's a big boy in New York. The Cardinal of New York called up and said, I will say the funeral mass. Jay had it all lined up. He didn't even have to ask anybody. He had it all lined up. And on that day, when it arrived, matter of fact, I spoke to Jay yesterday about the death of another friend of ours who just passed away 2 days ago, who was a fireman with us in Rescue 3. And while I was on the phone with him, I said, I'm going to be talking about you tomorrow. He said, really? And we talked a little bit about this. And he said, if those folks hadn't come forward, she would be buried, Josephine, in Potter's Field, where they bury homeless people and people that just don't have any money to have any other services. He said, but instead they had I hate to use the word, they had a grand funeral. He said, he spread the word amongst his guys. Hey, let's, Josephine, she's ours. She's ours. We all got to be there for the funeral. So there was like 5 or 6 or 7, nothing like the fire commissioner dying or the chief of the department. There was 5 or 6 or 7 fire department apparatus there with the companies. And there were dozens and dozens of uniformed firefighters off duty that showed up there, including Jay and his guys. And they carried Josephine. So they took her off. They took her off out of the hearse. And Jay and his firefighters shouldered the casket and up the steps. It was a rainy day. And they went into the vestibule. Go into most Catholic church, you go in, there's a set of doors. And then there's another set of doors right in front of it before you go into the church. He said, and there they were, standing in that vestibule with the casket on their shoulders, a lot of commotion and a lot of people around. He said he noticed a lot of the people that were in the vestibule staring past him, and he looked, and it was Rudy Giuliani. It was the mayor, former mayor, but mayor yet. And time came and they went in and had the whole service, carried her back out to the plot that the gentleman from the funeral parlor had donated. I wrote an article. I write for Firehouse Magazine, had been mentioned a little bit earlier. I wrote an article some years later, and the title of the article was Carrying Josephine. And it was the story I just told you. And the article I write for Firehouse is just one page. No matter how many words I write, they cut whatever they have to cut for it to be on one page. It never goes to another page. And it was just a one-page article. And of course, when I got that issue, I cut the back page out, and I put it in a frame with mounting and everything else, and I gave it to Jay, and he's got it hanging in his house. And that wonderful story, that wonderful, happy, sad story is what we're all about. It's really what firefighting is all about. It's what firefighters are all about. Firefighting is putting out fires. Being firefighters is something else. It's something else. It's what's going on at the tables here tonight. All of you sitting amongst each other, maybe with some new friends, maybe with some old friends. That's what we do. So Jay Jonas not only served the people of the city of New York very well that day in the work that they did in the North Tower. Not only that, but he served his company, Ladder 6, and his 5 firefighters. He got all of them out of the building as well. They all survived. I think they're all retired now. I think Jay was the last man standing. And in some ways, what he did, and his story is very well known within the FDNY, within that closed society that we all live in. And aren't our fire department sort of a closed society? My wife knew I was a New York City firefighter. I don't think she knew what borough I worked in, never mind the address of the firehouse or the phone number. My wife didn't know. She just knew I was a firefighter. Now, all of us modern day people, we have cell phones, and I do hate it so. But my wife could contact me if there was an emergency at home. I have 5 children, and of course those things happen. But my wife never really paid much attention to that, and I never had any intention of her paying attention to it. And we live in a very closed world. There's a lot of, I actually had 2 lives. I had my life as a firefighter and my life as a dad and a grandpa and a guy that lives out in the middle of the woods in Orange County and all the other things that I do. And it's really wonderful. It's really something to celebrate. I can even tell a tremendously sort of sad and tragic story, and it still can make you feel good about what we do. I really don't know of any things that we do that don't make you feel good. I know we do some terrible stuff. You know, we see some terrible things. We touch and lift some terrible things. We all know that. But without dwelling on that too much, most of the rest of the time, volunteer, career, small department, big department, it doesn't really matter. We are the luckiest people on the face of the earth, regardless of where your career goes, how long you work, when you retire, if you get sick earlier than someone else, or how long you live. We're really the luckiest people on earth. And my story, it's Jay's story, but I like telling it. My story about Jay Jonas is probably one of the best descriptions, one of the best explanations of how lucky we all are to be firefighters. Never mind the level of courage and bravery. Two things that get tossed around. Two words that get tossed around in the modern day fire service. Some people are more worried about how dangerous things are than how many people might be in that building needing help. It's one of the points I make when I'm out teaching and lecturing and training is, and it was also set up here already before I came up, it's really all about them. It's really all about you. It's really all about families and kids and schools and civilians and you know, citizens. So that's why I tell the story. I hope it's motivating. I hope it's inspires you to keep going back to work, keep going out on calls in the volunteer department, and keep doing what the folks that we're going to honor tonight, the folks who made rescues and you know, displayed courage and bravery in some of the tightest spots that they were ever in. That's all I have. Good night. Thank you.
Well, I'll say a lot of us didn't have our hand raised when he asked who knows Jay Jonas, and I'm happy to say that I can raise my hand now the next time that question is asked. So I appreciate that story. It was incredibly moving and powerful. All right, so we are going to recognize some of the heroes that are here among us tonight. So Carissa Rolone is going to come up to present the first award of the evening.
Thank you, Blakely. The Partners in Prevention Award is given to an individual or group that has done an outstanding job promoting fire safety and burn prevention in the community. These educational efforts must have impacted a significant percentage of the general public or a targeted group. Since joining Hecktown Volunteer Fire Department at the age of 18, Chief John Bast has dedicated his life to fire safety and burn prevention. He worked with Burn Prevention Network's previous Juvenile Fire Setter program, serving as a member of the JFS Advisory Committee, providing youth education and offering advice to the Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioners Committee on Statewide Juvenile Fire Misuse Efforts. He was a member of Pennsylvania's SR 6, the Senate Resolution 6, a report that provides background and legislative initiatives needed to improve the delivery of emergency services in the Commonwealth. Chief Bast has continually stressed fire safety and prevention throughout his career, participating in numerous community events and school programs. He served for many years on the BPN Board of Directors and continues to serve on the Valley Preferred Spirit of Courage Award Selections Committee. Throughout his tenure on the board, he has served on many committees and is known for his reliability and follow-through. Ever the champion of burn prevention, he continues to educate through social media and public. He is an active member of the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association and teaches in the fire science program at Warren County Community College. You will probably see him holding a boot later this evening for our Give Burns the Boot program. Please join me in congratulating my friend and the friend of all of the community, Chief John Bast, retired chief of the Easton Fire Department, for his lifelong fire and burn prevention efforts. He is escorted by Steve Schneider of Kistler O'Brien, sponsor of the Partners of Prevention.
Whoa, look at the lights. That was an old picture. I'm a lot grayer now, maybe about 10 pounds heavier. I want to first thank the selection committee and Steve for this honor. I want to thank my wife, Kathleen, my daughters, Amanda, Rachel, and Samantha, who participated in a lot of fire prevention activities. I want to thank Dan Dillard, who brought me on the board 17 years ago. And I'm still going strong. And Corey for her continued support, and all the members of the board. This means a lot. Thank you. Hang on, I got one more thing to say. Chief Salka, that story about Ladder 6, believe it or not, it's not such a closed community. Ladder 6 has some ties to the Lehigh Valley. How many are from the Lehigh Valley? Two of the firefighters are from the Lehigh Valley that were there that day for Ladder 6. One was a relative of where I went to high school, Notre Dame High School in Easton. One of the teachers there, or administrators, was a relative of one of the guys in 6, and another member was at one time a member of the Palmer Township Fire Department before he went up to New York. And believe it or not, Mike Warcola, one of his relatives, was a deputy chief in Lancaster City, Sue Warcola. And look at that. We really aren't that different. So, but thank you. Thank you again for this. And remember, when I'm out there with the boot, dig deep. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Spirit of Courage Award is given to individuals or groups who have performed exceptionally courageous acts to save another person from death or serious injury from any fire source. Civilians and first responders may receive this award. The rescue attempt must have involved a significant degree of personal risk, exposure to either death or severe injury. Our honorees tonight have put themselves at that great risk level to save people who would likely have perished had they not been there to lend a hand. Whether professional or volunteer, first responder or civilian, Spirit of Courage honors the honorees that share a selfless commitment to their fellow man and a fearless desire to do what we call the right thing. Here to present our first Spirit of Courage Award, I'd like to call up Lou once again to the podium. Please give him a round of applause.
When you're a volunteer firefighter and see someone in trouble, you stop to help, even if it's out of your jurisdiction and while others keep driving by. Let's watch this video.
I've been a firefighter for 18 years, but it's been in the family since my grandfather. My grandfather, he was one of the founders of the fire company. My father was a chief for 20 years, and then I have an older brother. Try to keep it family. We had a snowstorm the day before. Now I'm a public works employee, so I ended up working late and then going into work early that morning to clean the roads off. We got done early, so I figured nobody was home yet. The kids were at the babysitter, wife was at work. I'd go pick up the snowmobile parts I needed. Out of luck, coming up 73 to into Gilbertsville, I came upon the accident. I saw it didn't look good. I pulled over, I saw the car was on fire. I grabbed a personal fire extinguisher I keep with me, and I attempted to put out the fire. And the other motorist that was helping me, he was trying to get the passenger out, started yelling he needed help to get him out. He needed a seatbelt cutter. I didn't have mine on me at the time, so I emptied the fire extinguisher. I went around, I assisted him getting him out of the car. We drug him away from the vehicle as far as we could. And I said, was that it? Everyone's out. He said, no, there's still a guy in the car. I never heard him, saw him. The fire was getting bigger. The fire extinguisher didn't do much. I think by the time I was getting in, it got to the gas lines and it just fed the fire. And lots of smoke. I went back and I crawled into the car through the airbags. The fire was starting to come through the firewall at his legs. It was very hot. But I told him, I'm not going out until you get out. So you're coming with me. He was trying to get his legs up over the center console of the car. And I told him, you're not going to make it out that way. I got to push your legs back down. So I pushed his legs back in, and then I just wrapped them around the shoulders as good as I could. And I just started to yank. And with luck, he came out rather easily. Then the police officers finally showed up, and then they assisted him. And the other motorists took him away because I ended up pulling a muscle in my back. But it was all worth it. Very big adrenaline rush. I was shaking the rest of the afternoon, just thinking that I did something good. I saved somebody. I lived to help people. And that day I got to help somebody who was in a time of need. Everyone had good congratulations and good words to say about it. And they knew if I wasn't there, he wouldn't have made it. He did not have much time at all. Because the way the fire was coming through the firewall, I can't believe he didn't have any burns on his legs with how the flames were coming through. But if I wouldn't have been there, even the cop and the guy who told me that was helping me said I'd have never got him out.
Please join me. Please join me in congratulating Brett Marks of the Hereford Volunteer Fire Company for always being on duty, even when he's not. Brett, you didn't hesitate to jump into a burning car, even without your firefighter gear, and your actions undoubtedly saved 2 men from dying in that burning car. Brett is escorted by nominator Dean Marks, Deputy Chief of the Hereford Volunteer Fire Company.
I'd just like to thank my father for nominating me. It means a lot. And I can't believe I'm actually talking. Thank you, everyone. It means a lot.
Our second Spirit of Courage Award is another example of a firefighter always being on duty, even when he's working as a police officer.
I was born and raised in Emmaus. I've lived there my whole life. you know, everybody will be like, oh, I want to help others. I just wanted to be a part of something bigger. I want my kids someday to be like, you know, wow, Dad's pretty cool. Look what he's doing. And this is what I love to do. I love it. I was working a night shift that night, myself, my sergeant supervisor, Sergeant Schilling, and Officer Marrero. Then the call came out for an apartment building fire at Colonial Crest apartment complex. We both ripped down the road. There was a big haze throughout the complex. I got out of my car and I ran up, looked at the building, saw that there was a guy holding the door open in a white T-shirt out front. That's when he told me, he's like, yeah, my apartment's on fire. I said, is everybody out? He said, I don't know. We went in, and that's where we found a father with a child, a young child, and then a mother. And we got them out of the lower complex. And right before we left, I noticed smoke was starting to seep through the cracks of the door. You know, all fires contain a lot of carcinogens, so you can imagine everything burning inside of a house. That's emitting tons of different gases that are extremely caustic to your health. That's the job you signed up for. I'd rather take the hit for somebody else so that, you know, I could see a small child live someday. That's what I signed up for. Right as we came out of the building, we looked up and we saw another family up top on the third floor. There was a mother, a child, and a father up there. And then I climbed up, got the baby down. I told Mom, he said, baby first. Grabbed the baby.
Wait, baby. Come here. Come here, baby. I got you, baby. I know, baby.
Went back up. I said, all right, Mom, you're next. Mom climbed over. Mom faced me. We climbed down the ladder.
There you go. Keep going. There you go. Keep going. You're doing great.
Got her down. Went back up. Got Dad. Dad came back down. Same thing, facing me.
I like those shoes. They're nice. Dude. What are those, Nikes?
That's like my thing. I always like to try to like relate to someone. Say, hey, man, I like their shoes, or, you know, oh, that's a cool shirt. You know, so just to try to take his mind off things, just for a split second, you know, and try to make it a little bit better. That's what we can do to help.
Yeezys, they look fresh, dude. I like them. You got it, bro.
And then for a little bit of time, we still were trying to find if anybody else was trapped. So we went up. I climbed up to the second balcony, banged on the glass, sliding glass door. Nobody answered. So I took my baton, smashed the glass, tried to attempt to go in, but it was too much smoke all the way to the floor. I couldn't see in. So climbed back down. A female came around the side of the complex screaming that there were people trapped in the back. There's a fire in the back. You got to come quick. I ran around back with my partner, and that's where we saw another family of 4 on the very top floor. I grabbed the ladder off the truck, ran over, hoisted the ladder up. Same thing as the front. Got the baby down.
Come here, sweetheart. Here we go. All right, cool.
Got him down. Climbed back up. I got the child.
You gotta climb down, brother. Come on, man. I got you, bro. I got you.
Got him down. I went back up, got Mom, and then went back up and got Dad. You know, it was the job wasn't over when the victims were down. It was, you know, assisting now the rest of the guys who assisted us. Our whole job is, you know, to save or preserve life and property. That's what you signed up for. You know, that's what you do. So, and that's exactly what we did that day. And, you know, I can't take credit for everything without all the other fire departments that came that day. It was a collaborative effort between multiple agencies and the EMS staff that day. They did a phenomenal job as well, treating victims, transporting victims, and ensuring the safety of all of us there. So they did a great job. You know, I can't thank my coworkers enough and everybody else for assisting. And by the grace of God, everybody made it out okay. I don't still to this day know how everything went so smoothly, but it did. And, you know, yes, property was lost, but you can't replace a life. So.
Dude, thank you.
You got it, man.
For my kids, man.
You got it, man.
It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter where you came from. You know, when you're on scenes like that and other emergency scenes, it's what can I do to help a fellow human out? And that's the most amazing part about this job.
Please join me in congratulating Officer Timothy Klein of the Emmaus Police Department for persevering through extreme conditions to rescue several families without his turnout gear, by the way. Tim, while you have training as a firefighter, you were in a police uniform that night, not firefighter gear. And thank you for staying in tip-top physical shape in order to keep climbing up that ladder over and over again. Tim is escorted by nominator John Price, Chief of the Emmaus Emergency Services.
Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you to the Burn Network, Chief Price for the nomination, and my platoon for having everything go smooth that night. Like I said, it was a collaborative effort. I don't want to take credit for everything, but it couldn't have gone. It couldn't have gone without the help of other people too. So thank you. Thank you so much.
A fire in a high-rise apartment building populated with elderly residents is a recipe for disaster. But thanks to a well-coordinated fire and rescue effort and 3 Wilkes-Barre firefighters, everyone made it out safely.
I started in the fire service at 14 years old. I lived by a firehouse, so I always saw them in and out. So when I was old enough, I decided I wanted to do it.
Previous job, I worked for the American Red Cross Blood Services, so I enjoyed helping people, and I thought this would be a great way to do it.
My father was an EMT in the early 70s, so I think I kind of always was just destined to go this way. I love the field.
So the day of the fire, an alarm came in for an automatic fire alarm at Benai Breath Apartments. Second floor smoke detector activation.
As the calls come in, they were getting worse as they came in. So off we went.
The building that the fire was in, it is a senior high-rise. It poses what we call high risk.
So when we arrived on scene, there was already heavy fire coming out the second floor window. And we were met with very high heat, very poor visibility, just pretty awful conditions.
We got to the fire floor, which is, thank God, only the second floor, because if we had to go more, I don't know how some of these people would have got out.
As soon as you opened the door to get into that stairwell, we knew we were in trouble. The smoke was black from the floor to the ceiling. It's very, very toxic, and it could combust at any time.
The farther down the hallway we went, the hotter it got.
You can't see anything, nothing. It was so black, and the carbon in the air was just so black. You couldn't, I'd have to keep wiping my mask to just see a flicker of light, or it was awful.
It was myself, firefighter Graham, and firefighter Matchy, and we discovered the unresponsive lady on the floor of the hallway.
So we dropped everything then and went to get the person off the floor.
This is the first time that I've rescued an unconscious victim.
When it's going on, you have no idea who's even standing next to you. It's that dark. It was myself and firefighter Graham were on top, and then I believe firefighter Matchy was at her leg. So in case somebody stopped fast or fell, her head or her body wouldn't go back or hurt her anymore, because obviously she couldn't protect herself.
Removing an unconscious victim is not the same as when you practice with a dummy. It's a lot harder. Nothing could prepare you for doing something like that.
We ended up getting her down to the stairwell, where thankfully we had 2 or 3 firemen on their way up to help. And we assisted with her down the stairs and to the ambulance crew.
Once you find somebody like that, your primary goal is to get them to EMS. Life safety is our primary focus in any fire.
Within a minute, she probably would not have made it. There's no way. Not in that environment.
So once we removed the victim, we went right back to work. There was more work to be done.
Other firefighters were screaming that there were other people hanging out windows right around the corner from us.
I think there was some panic, and a lot of people didn't understand what the procedure was.
One gentleman would not leave his room. We opened the door to get him out, and he kept yelling at us, close the door. We had a outside agency with their ladder and 2 guys on the ladder trying to coax this guy up onto the ladder. Well, I had a window of opportunity and I ran in and got him out and took him right down the stairs. That happened floor by floor.
We literally evacuated the whole building. It was over 100, but everybody did an amazing job getting everybody out of there.
They're my heroes. I'm here because of those guys, because they had to come and get me.
Removing the other people was a coordinated effort. You know, the initial crews did a fantastic job with the amount of manpower we had, and I'm glad that I have the crew I have, because without them, it doesn't get done.
The people there that night did an absolutely fantastic job.
Every time we go out the door, there's a risk. You just need to be ready for that moment.
You just do it. No matter how strenuous, how dangerous, how hot, how smoky, you just do it. And we did.
I think it's just something we're programmed with, that we put ourselves at risk to help somebody else. You're going into environments that everybody runs out of. So a lot of people's animals too, they'll come to me, they'll grab me on the shoulder and say, my dog's on the 2nd floor. I'll do everything I can, because that's a family member to them, and they'll tell you that.
It's a great feeling to know that you helped.
That's why they call us, to get people out and to put fires out, and we can't fail.
You know, I wake up every day when I go to work and I treat everybody like they're my family.
This is my life's work. This is all I've done. My first call was December 15th, 1987.
26 and a half years. Nothing's changed. It's since the first day I started. I just want to be there to help.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else. It's the greatest job in the world, and I work with the greatest people in the world. So what would I don't want to do anything else, you know?
Please join me in congratulating Captain Eric Anderson and firefighters Ralph Graham and Richard Mackey of the Wilkes-Barre Fire Department for persevering through high heat and thick black smoke to bring out an unconscious victim. She survived thanks to you 3. They are escorted by Nominator Jay Delaney, Chief of the Wilkes-Barre City Fire Department.
We'd just like to thank the Byrne Foundation and Chief Delaney for the nomination, and it's an honor to receive this award. We couldn't have done it without the men and women that we work with every day. Thank you.
Our next award shows that despite high heat, flames, and thick smoke, a police officer persevered to give a child a chance at life.
I've been a police officer for about a year. I've always been involved in emergency services, involved with the fire company for 10 years and the local EMS for 4 or 5 years. Our town, the Rescue Hook and Ladder, is a majority of us are police officers, so it's a close working relationship with everybody. Shenandoah Heights is just a little bit outside of Shenandoah. It's a different municipality actually, but it's a small area, quiet. Not much happens up there. That day, myself and my partner, Captain Applegate, were actually just getting back to the station after a call, and the fire came in, and I started heading up that way as he was finishing up in the station. And on the way up, they called us and said, you know, there's the pediatric entrapment, which luckily I was 3/4 of the way there already. When I got on scene, Mom was out on the sidewalk, very frantic, screaming. Our baby was upstairs, and there was a little bit of smoke coming out of the front of the house. I went in. On the 2nd floor was another younger child who was actually in the bathroom wetting a towel, trying to put the towel over his face. to try to save the baby. I was able to convince him to step back. And then when I was able to get to the third floor before the smoke banked down to the floor. On the third floor, the younger child and mom were yelling, go to the left, go to the left. And I got down and I started crawling. When I was crawling, I was able to hear the baby crying. So I knew there was a chance. So I just kept pushing on. I was able to push the door open to the room. And at that point, I was able to see because the bed was on fire, so it was very bright in there. The baby was laying on the side of the bed. Like the front half of the bed was on fire. And the child was like at the bottom half of it. I was assuming it was in pain, just trying to push its way away from it the best it could. Kind of like at that point, almost rolling off onto the floor, which would have been trapped like in the corner against the wall the way he was falling off the bed. Just as quick as I can, grab the baby and get out of there. So it was starting to get hard to breathe for me, and we just had to be quick. I had him in both arms, and then once I got to the bottom of the third floor steps, the smoke cleared out again because it was just the fire was all upstairs, and I was able to just get the rest of the family to start making their way out again because mom and all started coming in worrying about their baby. We all got back outside, and at that point, this is when I ran into my partner, Captain Applegate, and he was a big help then at that point to try to rush the ambulance there and render aid, and it worked out nice. At the moment, it was hectic, Then once the baby was passed off to the ambulance and they had the fire out, it calmed down. Everyone was coming up to me, patting me on the back, saying, great job and all. My partner on the day, Captain Applegate, was one of the first. He gave me a big pat in the back and said, "You gave that kid a chance at life." From what people were telling me and all that, they were saying that if I wasn't there probably wasn't much longer that child had. The airways and the lungs were severely burned, and the body had severe burns all over. Last I heard, the baby made a full recovery. It's something you wouldn't expect to happen. It was like out of a movie.
Please join me in congratulating Officer Mark Hysock of the Shenandoah Borough Police Department. Mark, you pushed forward through extreme conditions to save this baby who was out of time. Mark is joined by nominator Kaylee Lindenmuth, reporter for the Shenandoah Sentinel.
Just want to thank the Burn Network for putting on this event. It's a very emotional moment for a lot of people here tonight. It was an honor to be nominated by the Kaylee Lindenmuth, the Shenandoah Sentinel, and very grateful to be invited here tonight. Thank you.
And now, at the other end of the age spectrum, our final Spirit of Courage Award demonstrates how two police officers worked together amid thick smoke to save an elderly man. Their story was featured on the Hearts of Heroes program sponsored by Balfour Restoration.
Growing up, as a kid, you always think a hero is somebody that, helps somebody, saves somebody. You get kids and stuff that come up to you and they look up to you, and, all you can do is tell them, hey, I do this job to be able to help people, and you can do it someday too.
I believe it was somebody delivering newspapers in the morning who called. They were out, thankfully, that early in the morning on Thanksgiving. And as soon as we pulled up, we saw flames coming out of the second-story bedroom. There was a car in the driveway, so we figured somebody was home. I was activating my sirens and stuff to just try to wake up potentially whoever was in the house.
I tried the front door. I got stopped. It wouldn't budge on kicking it probably 5-10 times.
I ran to the back door and kicked that in, and we were able to gain entry into the home. As soon as we got into the house, we were immediately hit with smoke.
Whoa! We started yelling and screaming, trying to wake people up.
I immediately went upstairs. By the time you got to the top of the stairs, the smoke was so thick, even with our flashlights, it's just blinding you. I just tried to stay as low as possible. So I tried to hug the floor as best I could.
Can anybody hear me?
And that's eventually when I heard the elderly gentleman.
Fire! You got a fire! Get out of here! Let's go!
I directed him to try to come to my flashlight if he could. I kind of saw through the smoke through my flashlight him standing at the edge of his bedroom. And that's when I kind of just took a deep breath, ran through the smoke and tried to grab him.
Sir, come on! I can't breathe. Follow me, let's go.
My brain just kind of turns off and you kind of just act and don't really take the time to think and assess. I just knew that, especially after hearing that he was in there, I was going to do my best to get him out. But then I had to breathe. So I swapped out with my partner and I ran downstairs so I could catch my breath.
That's when I went up, I saw him and kind of dragged him to the top of the steps.
Come on, sir. Oh, that hurt. Come on.
My partner came back up. We worked as a team to try to get him downstairs, the gentleman. At the bottom of the steps, my partner and I grabbed him, held on to him, took him right out the way we came in.
I got you. I'm right at the lawn. I'm right at the lawn.
As we were coming out, glass literally fell right to our feet. And it's like a movie, you know, stuff shattering, it's falling to your feet. I mean, where's the rain at? That's all I'm waiting on now, you know? But yeah, it's definitely a moment I'm not going to forget. I remember it like yesterday.
By the time we got him outside, the fire department and EMS was already on scene, put him in a stretcher, and then they immediately took him to the hospital.
Once we got him out in the grass and we were looking up, I just kind of catching my breath. I think I've realized how dangerous a fire can be with the smoke is actually really scary because it burns your eyes, it burns your throat. I've seen some crazy things on the job and you don't really get an opportunity to actually possibly save somebody like that. I guess it was right place, right time for that delivery driver, right place for my partner and I. And it's heartwarming just to know that, you know, he gets to enjoy another day. And it was nice to see his family appreciate what a first responder can do. And, you know, that's a holiday that we all celebrate. I think the last thing you want to do is mourn somebody on Thanksgiving.
I later found out that he was a pilot in World War II. He obviously did a lot for our country. So that was a tiny little payback for him. We were getting a commendation for that event, and he was there with his family. And we were able to meet him and talk to him again. And they were all obviously very grateful.
I drive by his house all the time. They're slowly repairing it. I know he's waiting eagerly, I guess, to get back into his house. So
I intend to live there till my time is up.
definitely could have been a lot worse. A house can always be replaced, but people can't, and family can't, you know.
Please join me in congratulating Sergeant Aaron Simon and Officer Robert McMahon of the Hatboro Police Department for finish reading the script here. For never giving up despite the conditions. You didn't know for sure anyone was in the house, yet you went in anyway, and without firefighter gear. When you saw the stair chair, you kept going because you knew someone needed you to survive. Our award recipients are escorted by Mark D. Rugg, Chief of the Hatboro Police Department.
Really want to thank everybody for this, the whole award and everything. Firefighters out here, fires suck. So thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you for this event. It's really nice. There's a lot more people that have done a lot more than us here. You know, we appreciate it's very humbling to be up here, you know, and be able to know that, you know, somebody is living another day. It's awesome. That's it. Thank you.
Well, I think we can all agree that we're inspired and humbled and share an immense amount of gratitude towards these individuals for doing everything in their power for others, people they've never met, people who are having their worst day. And thank you just doesn't seem adequate. But here tonight, We hope it conveys our deepest appreciation. We'll now have Mark Linbarski, Administrator for Patient Care Services at Lehigh Valley Hospital Cedar Crest, to present the award, the Walter J. Okunski Phoenix Award.
Thank you, Blakely. Welcome, everybody here this evening. I am a little biased because I'm the one presenting this award, but I must say I feel it is the best award of the night. Like a mythical phoenix, this award symbolizes new life after fire. It's a reminder that even in catastrophic suffering, there is an opportunity to flourish. The burn team sees firsthand the suffering that burn survivors experience and the strength, courage, and resilience it takes to rebuild their lives. We have chosen for this award a burn survivor who embodies strength and determination. Riva Gupta was a successful physician assistant in a busy neurosurgery practice in New York. On March 5th, 2023, she and her mother, Roma Gupta, were passengers in a small plane that crashed. Riva was the only survivor. She suffered catastrophic injuries and barely survived. When she awoke sometime later, she found that her life has been changed forever. Riva immediately went to work on healing her body and spirit while grieving the loss of her beloved mother. She relied heavily on family's tireless strength and support, along with none other than the music of Taylor Swift. More than anything, she wanted to get back to things she loved: travel, relationships with family and friends, independence, and helping others. Within no time, Riva was contributing to the burn community. Even while she continued to endure surgeries, procedures, and loss, when she attended the burn support groups and shared her story, no holds barred, others gravitated to her openness and authenticity. When she attended World Burn Congress just 7 months after the accident, she wanted to be part of a larger community and help other survivors. She completed the process to become a certified Survivors Offering Assistance in Recovery peer supporter. She also wants to help the medical community better understand care for burn survivors. This is something that she felt that she was lacking even in her own practice as a physician's assistant. Riva brings the unique perspective of a provider and a patient to her interactions. And she takes every opportunity to engage and volunteer within the greater survivor community with honesty and her distinct sense of humor.
For Christmas, I had gifted my mom a lesson for both of us to fly a plane together. I had a chance to fly, and then we landed the plane, and then she had a chance to fly. It was more of a sightseeing flight, but it was just an adventure for the two of us. So I was in the front with the pilot. Everything went smoothly. We landed back at the airport, and then my mom and I switched seats. So I got in the back of the plane. Right after we took off, we were flying around. Me and my mom were talking about how beautiful everything looked. And then I noticed some smoke billowing out from underneath her seat. And so I mentioned it to the pilot. He called it a mayday. We turned around to head back to the airport. And then I saw flames coming out from where the smoke was billowing up from. So I turned to my side to try and kick the flames out. And that's the last thing I remember. We couldn't get close enough to the airport in time. So he ended up crash landing the plane in a neighborhood. And I have a vague memory of my mom screaming, "Riva, get out of the plane." Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I remember, I was in a hospital room and my dad and my sister were there, and I had no idea what was going on. I knew I had been badly injured. I couldn't speak because I had a trach. So I was just kind of taking signs from everybody around me, and my sister and my dad and my brother were giving me as much information as they could within reason, because they didn't want me to become overly upset, especially about my mom passing away.
This new video has now surfaced, and it really gives us a sense of just how extreme this crash was. We want to warn you, the video is graphic. It was sent to us by a viewer. You can see the plane and then the fireball that followed. As we've reported, a New Jersey mother, Roma Gupta, was killed in that crash, and police say her 33-year-old daughter, Riva, is also still in critical condition right now.
According to the attorney for the owner of the plane, Farmingdale-based Danny Weisman Flight School, the mom and daughter went up in the plane on a discovery flight that they bought on Groupon. It was around 3 on Sunday when the pilot radioed to the Republic Air Tower saying that there was an emergency.
I suffered burns to 53% of my body. Basically, the entire upper half of my body was burned. So my torso, my back, my arms, my hands, my face. I had some fractures in my spine, a couple of rib fractures. And then once I started getting out of bed, we noticed that I had a lot of knee pain and my knee was very swollen. So we got imaging and it showed that I had some meniscal damage and some small tears to my ligaments. They had to do multiple skin grafts to all of those areas except for my face. So the donor sites all came from skin on my legs and my feet.
Yeah, so I kind of heard about Riva's case because she's being transferred to us from another medical facility. And my first impression was just how dedicated and locked in your family was. Priya was very much invested in your mental health. And so she wanted to get connected with me as the clinical social worker and make sure I was involved.
My recovery process was very difficult. I'm still going through it. The most difficult part for me was that I understood everything that was going on, being a medical professional. That made everything just a little more scary because I knew what the implications of everything they were telling me was. I remember being in the burn unit and I had been very adamant about not wanting to know what was happening surgically. I remember I was in my bed and my sister was there and Dr. Eberwein called her out into the hallway and my sister came back into the room and I said, "What were you guys talking about?" And she said, "Well, I think that they're going to have to take some of your fingers." And I said, "Which fingers?" She was like, "The 4 fingers on your left hand." And I asked if that included my thumb. She said no. And I kind of was just like, okay, as long as I have my thumb, I'll be able to manage. While I was in the hospital, I was undergoing burn care daily. For the first several weeks, it was under sedation. But when I stopped receiving sedation and I was just awake during my burn care, my sister would put Taylor Swift on shuffle on my iPad. And that was like my comfort blanket. Had tickets to see her in Philadelphia. I was very excited. And then the plane crash happened and I was in the hospital. When I got out of the hospital, a friend of mine from work had gotten tickets for the show in London and she gifted them to me and my sister, my niece, and my cousin. And we went on a little girls trip. We took my niece. She's 4 years old. She had the time of her life. And it was very cathartic for both, I think for all of us, but me and my sister especially. Like a lot of her lyrics really resonated with me. Even songs that were about, breakups and heartbreak and love can be applied to a different type of heartbreak and a different type of grief. We've talked a lot about me lacking that part of me, which was so involved in caring for patients. That was always very important to me. And then it felt like it was kind of ripped away from me and everyone was helping me instead. And while I appreciated all the love and support, I just feel more useful when I'm helping other people. Jonathan has helped me get involved with the SOAR community and becoming a SOAR advocate, which is something that I recently started working on. I can't wait to explore a little bit more. And I know we've talked about burn camp and helping the kids and just being there and that kind of being a therapeutic experience for everybody involved. And I feel like I can help people while helping myself.
I saw it like right away when you started to attend our support group, where it was like so quickly you realized if I'm open to sharing and being vulnerable, other group members can kind of join me in that. And it's a give and take and watching the whole group benefit from you kind of diving in and really telling your story. Even then going to World Burn Congress while you were like definitely still in a state where that was a real physical challenge, but also understanding that you wanted to be part of this bigger community and how important it was for you and your family.
Yeah, World Burn Congress kind of turned things around for me. I know I spoke to you about meeting the other burn victim who had very similar injury pattern to me, a very similar injury, also in a plane crash. And it kind of helped me see the whole thing, helped me see other people on the other side of this injury, that I wasn't just stuck in the pain and the misery and the discomfort, that there could be life after the burn injury. I'm very lucky that I maintained my cognitive level of function. You know, I could have very easily not ended up me. Everyone who sees me after a long time, they hug me and they're like, I'm just so happy you're still Reva.
The thing that jumps off the table for me right away is always Reva's authenticity. And it's just your way of communicating. And I think it comes from a place of having done a lot of work and having practiced a lot of introspection and understanding yourself really well. The other word that comes to mind is just like bravery. We talk about a lot of survivors being brave, you know, just kind of going through burn care. But then I think when we listen to your story and we hear what you've been through, you've overcome a ton of adversity. Your family's overcome a ton of adversity. And you don't allow that to sit in this negative space.
And I think that comes from my mom. She was always such a strong-willed person, and she had struggles of her own. She had cancer twice, and she never, lost her footing. She kept moving forward. She was there for us. She didn't let her illness affect her children. And I don't want my illness to, first of all, affect me or anybody around me. I think that having a positive attitude really helps you recover. My mom doesn't want me to sit here and be miserable. She wants me to live my life. She wants me to be happy. And, she wants me to move forward.
It is my great pleasure to present the Walter J. Okunsky Phoenix Award to Reva Gupta for her selfless desire to do good in the world and show others that there is life after a burn injury, no matter how devastating that injury was. She is escorted by nominator Jonathan Lepore, clinical social worker in the Lehigh Valley Health Network Regional Burn Center.
First, I want to say how honored I am to be here and in such esteemed company. The stories we've heard today are nothing short of incredible. When I woke up from my coma, my friends and family would affectionately refer to me as their superhero. And I think that the true superheroes are the people in this room today, the first responders, the hospital workers, the people at Burn Prevention Network, my fellow burn survivors, and especially all of the loved ones who helped them persevere. And I know I wouldn't be here today without my mom. She taught me what it meant to be strong and courageous and to live life to the fullest, and I'm not going to stop doing that. So thank you so much.
Well, I think we can all be in agreement that this has certainly been an evening once again of inspiring examples of courage in the face of danger and adversity. We have all been moved by these stories and hopefully motivated by the dedication of those who demonstrate what it means to truly care for others. And as we conclude this special evening, I want to thank you on behalf of the Valley Preferred Spirit of Courage Cabinet for joining us to honor these heroes and for supporting our continuing efforts to prevent the devastation of fire and burn injuries. A couple of housekeeping notes as you leave this evening. Firefighters will be positioned at the exits to once again accept your donations to our Give Burns the Boot campaign. There's also, due to technology, a QR code also available in your program that's on page 17, in case you haven't noticed already. Funds raised tonight will go toward helping young burn survivors at Camp Susquehanna, a video we watched earlier this evening, as well as burn survivor support programs provided by the Lehigh Valley Health Network Regional Burn Center. And we thank you for your generosity ahead of time. All award recipients tonight, please take note that you should come to the stage area here before you leave to pick up your award box. Okay, and fire company representatives who displayed their helmets in the front of the stage here, please don't forget to take your covers with you. Okay, I don't want any of that to happen, so make sure you pick them up. If you want a basket tonight, you are invited to go to the table where the baskets are located to claim your prize. And congratulations to all those winners ahead of time. Thanks to those of you that put a bid in, as well as those who donated auction items for us tonight. And now, ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand as we formally retire our national colors. Color Guard, please step forth to retire the colors.
Sir, may we retrieve the colors? May we retrieve the colors? Honor Guard, retrieve the colors. Left face. Forward, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, we give these folks a nice round of your applause, please, for a job well done.
This evening is about selflessness, sacrifice, and overcoming insurmountable odds. It's about the heroes, the ones we celebrate tonight, and the ones we are all capable of becoming. Thank you, first responders, for responding to the call for help and for caring so selflessly about others. Be safe out there. God bless and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, we did it. Let's see if our lady with the camera will take one in front of here.
Sure.